Welcome back, folks, to the Membership Machine Show. This is episode 51. Unfortunately, I don't have my normal co-host, Carmen, but I've got another friend of the show. He was here last week. I've got Kurt with me. That also is my normal full-time co-host for the WP-Tonic show. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing how your service business can move to a membership model. I think a lot of people, it's one of the main things that drives them into the online membership area. Also, I think I've got a lot of people that work with WP-Tonic that are in the continuing educational sector as well, and they've been highly successful in that area. So we'll probably touch upon that during the discussion. So, Kurt, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Absolutely, Jonathan. My name is Kurt Von Annen. I run an agency called Mañana No Mas. We focus on membership and learning websites, and I also work directly with WP-Tonic and Lifter LMS.
That's fantastic. Should be a fabulous discussion, folks. But before we go into the main meat and potatoes of the show, I've got a couple messages from our major sponsors. We will be back in a few moments, folks.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Lifter LMS, the leading learning management system solution for WordPress. If you or your client are creating any kind of online course, training-based membership website, or any type of e-learning project, Lifter LMS is the most secure, stable, well-supported solution on the market. Go to lifterlms.com and save 20% at checkout with coupon code podcast20. That's podcast20. Enjoy the rest of your show.
We're coming back, folks. I just want to point out, got some fabulous deals from the major sponsors. Plus, I got a curated list of the best WordPress plugins, specifically aimed if you're building a membership Buddy Boss website. All the plugins that we recommend, we utilize at WP-Tonic, so they're all being tested. Save you a load of time scrolling the internet trying to find the best solution. You can get all these goodies by going over to wp-tonic.com/deals, wp-tonic.com/deals, and you get all the goodies there. What more could you ask for? Probably a lot more, but that's all you're going to get from that page. Sorry to disappoint. I don't think you're going to be that disappointed. It's a good page. So, Kurt, so the title of the show is How Your Service Business Can Move into a Membership Model. And you're the perfect guest for this topic because you've got some extensive experience based on your own experience in this area. Because you've got your business experience is in the training service area, and then you have morphed into helping people build membership sites, but you've also got your own. So I thought you would be the perfect special guest to discuss this. So how would you introduce the listeners and viewers to this subject, Kurt? I'm going to throw it over to you because you're the expert, really.
Yeah, there's a couple of different things that we have to consider when we talk about services versus membership, Jonathan. And that is, some would say, well, what's wrong with offering services to clients? What's wrong with offering the service or being that person that does the work? And honestly, there's nothing wrong. You have to become a subject matter expert somehow through some experience. And so, I have decades of experience in running power sports dealerships. I've worked in aviation, marine, motorcycle, automotive. And so that experience is what gives me the ability to combine that with some web knowledge and then offer these membership products in that way. But you have to recognize that when you are offering a service, you are definitely exchanging your time for dollars. You are definitely locked into, I can do this in 5 hours. It's going to cost you $1,000 or whatever the deal is, right? For consulting or whatever. direct person to person. Once you put it into a membership framework, something that's online, I'm not going to say passive because I don't really believe in passive income in that way, because I think everything needs maintained and moderated and all that stuff. But you have more control over your time and its distribution to the clients on a wholesale basis, which I think basically multiplies your time, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I really dislike this passive income. I think it's, to some extent, it's nonsense. What would have been a much better metaphor this is, from instead of one to one, you're getting one to many, and because you're utilizing the same benefit from being a sole entrepreneur to having a team, but instead of the team is replaced by the membership website. So that's why you have a team in a service orientated business, because that enables you to serve more clients.
Yeah. I was just going to say, in practice, yes, I have membership examples, but I use a good, better, best pricing strategy, which adds a level of complications we can discuss later if we get the time. But, the membership is one thing, but then there's like this hybrid example where you still can offer people, coaching, group coaching, or one-on-one coaching, but all of that comes at, extending the price, right? And generating more margin for yourself. And so there's really great ways to really take advantage of your expertise in a membership model, which is much more advantageous than driving state to state and visiting clients.
Oh, I actually think a lot of people jump in to building the membership website too early. I think actually, if you've got a service business, online or regional or in your town, I think it's much better to try and build, to do the first step online is to either do one-to-one consultations or do group consultations at different price point, and then get to know what are the key pain points that you could answer in a membership syllabus. Because a lot of people, they just jump into building the membership site without what I've just outlined, and they're just making educated guesses about what are the key pain points. And sometimes that they're right, but a lot of the time they're wrong. That's why I also constantly beating the drum that you shouldn't build what I've called the war to peace first course scenario, where you throw in literally the kitchen sink in trying to offer value, which is understandable, but you're just making one educated guess on top of another educated guess on top of another educated guess, instead of getting your first small group of students through the course and then offering them a substantial discount, but then saying, I'm going to ask you to fill in a survey. I'm going to have a one-to-one Zoom with you, which I'm going to record after you've done the course, to find out what was effective and what wasn't. So many people, they spend a year building a course out without even getting their first student in. I know I've just gone on a little bit of a rant, but what's your response to what I've just outlined?
I agree. I've made the mistake myself. So I think that's part of the key to my success in working in the WordPress space, Jonathan, is just being so willing to admit when I screw it up and then let people learn from my mistakes. I've done that. I've built the giant nightclub that nobody wanted to come and dance at. Hundreds of hours of development and animations and colors, and you make it look awesome, and then no one's there. It's attracting the users is difficult. So to your point, if you start out with some, online training, some Zoom consultations, maybe it turns into a mastermind. You start to record the interactions of that peer-to-peer training that's happening in that group. And to your point, identify the pain points that help kind of give you that roadmap of why are people in here and what are they really discussing. And then that gives you the outline to build your syllabus.
So what do you, I think obviously there's going to be a bit of overlap with the key points that I've listed for this conversation. So the next point I've got is the advantages of switching to a membership. I think we've touched on it a little bit, but can you give your own synopsis based? What do you see as some of the big benefits of the model?
If I were to compare my training example to a competitor's training example in the power sports area, and I love this guy that I'm comparing myself to. So if he listens to this, this is not a cut on him. He's great at what he does, but he travels dealer to dealer to dealer and consults with dealers in person. And I understand that having that relationship and that handshake and that eye contact, I understand that it has value. But with my membership model, I'm able to bring in 5, 10, 15 dealers at a time. Even if it's fractional revenue, I'm able to bring those in numbers, put them into group training, group consulting. We can do homework. We have consultations once a month. So I'm actually getting more touch points with the client because I meet them every month than my competitor does, seeing people once every 6 months. Right. So I'm getting a higher touch point, but I'm exposing myself to more clients at the same time, which enables me to generate more revenue. And I think in today's world, we really have to look at how are we leveraging our time to generate revenue. And in this situation, a direct comparison, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, we're both training in the same field. We're training similar content. Sure, sometimes the dealers really like that personal touch of that in-person contact, but it's expensive. The travel's expensive, and he can only stay at that dealership for 1 to 2 days at a time. And he's only there once every 6 months. Whereas if someone joins my membership example, they have access to the content 24/7, 52 weeks a year. They've always got content. They've always got inspiration. They've always got resources, and they get the live contact with me once a month in their consultation calls. So it's actually a better value for the customer, and it drives revenue for me.
And like you say, we said before, I don't know in your own particular, but you can have the group discussions, you can have one-to-one online, or you can visit the dealer, and those can be for that physical if they request it, but at different price points. So you're basically giving more price options, more availability to your knowledge. That is the power. What I think we do is I was looking at these. If you're okay with this, Kurt, I think in the first half we're blast through the key list I've got in front of myself and in front of you, and then maybe in the second half, if you're okay with it, Kurt, we'll talk about your own journey, what you've learned about building your own course.
Sure.
Why you decided to build it, what technology, what key technologies you utilize to build your course, and how you made that decision. How does that sound, Kurt?
That's sure. It's fine. I'm in.
Right. Because I think the listeners will learn a lot from that, and viewers. So let's go on. Identify the opportunity. I think we've done that. So the opportunities of moving the service to membership. Identify the most common elements that you. So I kind of touched upon that. What are the most frequently asked questions that people, when they're emailing you, if you're engaging one-to-one, write them down, record them, because they will be the key guide to what you've got to try and achieve in your first membership solution. You should have some understanding based on your, it doesn't have to be your work experience. This could be a hobby that you've got experience in. Another sector that a lot of people have success is in the continuing education market, with emphasis on medical, but not solely. I've got a couple of clients that got thousands of students that gone through that are in the continuous education. I was looking up in Google, and there was one report that regularly came up, and it says that the market, and it's reaching out to 2028, which I have some slight problems with because I'm not even sure any of us are going to be around in 2028. But it says that by 2028, I don't know why they chose 2028 though. The market in continuous education is going to be almost $4.23 billion in the North America. So it's a pretty substantial market, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the trick is to figure out, how big is your piece of that pie? What role can you fill if you have a membership idea? How would you put that into place? And to your point, what elements would you offer in that membership example? And how would you generate revenue from it? Right. In a day where people can get free training on YouTube, you have to figure out how you would package your information in a way that customers and students want to procure it. And I like the idea of the continuing education because it's mandatory training for a lot of students, right? Organizations will mandate the training, and then you're the provider, and they funnel people right to you.
Yeah, but I think the thing I think the opportunity is that you can draw people in from some YouTube videos, and then you can offer some training that gets them ready to take the continuous education. Because I don't know, you probably have more knowledge because of your association with Lifter LMS, is that you got certain resources that you take that will go against the hours that you have to do to get your continuing education credential.
Yeah.
But then to do that, you normally have to go to some board or some authority to get your course
become accredited.
To be accredited, and there's a few loops depending on each industry, but you could start building income and recognition before you go to that step. I think that's quite achievable. Would you agree with that?
I would. I can think of a couple of course creators right offhand that have built an entire presence online with course preparation, where they prepare people to test out for certification in certain industries, whether that be the medical field for nursing or mortgage brokerage or, something along those lines. I just worked on a project, halfway through this year that was based in real estate, that was helping people with not the realtors, but the people that process the paperwork for the realtors, and it was a whole thing. It was take this course, we'll prepare you how to take the test and get your certification.
Yeah, I think there's a whole group of people that have built a highly successful membership websites on that. And the beauty of it is they're always changing the syllabus, the guiding panels or organizations. They're always changing it because things do change. But they do have, in my opinion, they have a habit of changing them because it means that people, have to continue, legally a lot of the time they have to anyway. But so in my experience, they're always changing the requirements. So there's always a need for these people to keep their membership with you, so they don't unsubscribe, because churn is one of the major. Every business model, folks, has its own challenges. If it's all easy, we would all be successful in business. The truth is, most businesses fail in between 1 year or 5 years, because it isn't easy. But this model, your churn is less of a problem. Would you agree with that?
I do. You got to consider all of it. And that's why some of the elements that we mentioned, sometimes people will hear you and I mention, the courses, or we'll mention the social aspects like Buddy Boss, or we'll mention, and it's because those different elements can add that stickiness that helps you reduce the churn. But you have to have a community or a tribe that has an appetite for whatever those tools are. So you kind of have to sample it. I find that each of these communities is a little different.
Yeah, because we talk about community. We're just not talking about it just for the sake of it, folks. But the reason why we mention it is one of the main it's one of the main methodologies that you can utilize to reduce churn, and keeping your syllabus up to date. Community gamification to some extent. I'm not sure about gamification. I think that's more about encourage. Well, I suppose it does reduce churn, because the other main factor that everybody that's got any experience running a membership site is encouraging the actual students to finish the course. And normally, most people that are running a membership, not always, they don't have to, and it doesn't apply always, but a lot of the time there's a money back guarantee period. And a lot of people, depending on the scenario, they bail out and they ask for a refund. And that's one of the reasons why people look at gamification and all the other things that we discuss on this show, and that Kurt discusses as well on his own podcasts. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
It's all about completion and trying to reduce churn, really, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to keep people in. And that's why offering those office hours and those group calls and all those things really extend to a property's success. Once you put your personality to it and you give people a live face or voice to connect with, it seems like you get that stickiness and you get a higher percentage of course completion. If you just throw up a course and there's no support for that course, very few people are going to complete it.
I think another area is, you got to reflect back. What would you have liked to have known if you had been starting your own business? What would have been the key things that had been, if they had been communicated to you at the early stages, that you've known about? And that's what you should be providing to your particular niche in your membership. What advice? And you can combine that with continuous education, by offering a module, things you need to know. If it's aimed at a particular part of the course, is aimed at new people entering the profession, or the thing that the continuous education is focused at. And I think that's quite popular. What's your own views about that, Kurt?
The more you can prep the user, the more that you don't assume that your student already has base knowledge, the more success you're going to have. For instance, I once was mentoring some young people, and one of them said he was going to quit his job. He had a hands-on job, and he was going to quit his job and go into business management. And I said, well, that's awesome, Dougie. If that's what you want to do, man, that's great. I said, so what does that look like for you? What are you going to do? And he goes, well, I'm going to manage businesses. I said, okay, I get that. You went for business management. You want to manage businesses. So what are you going to do? And he goes, well, we'll manage. And I said, no, what would a day in the life of a business manager look like? And that's when it hit like a ton of bricks, Jonathan. He had no idea what he was signing up for. And so at the time, I worked across the street from Intel, and I had some friends that worked in HR at Intel. And I made arrangements for Dougie to go spend the day at Intel and see what business managers do for a living. And he came back to work the next day and he said, yeah, I'm not quitting. I don't want to.
No, because it's a continuous stream of problems that other people's balls ups and other people's things. The money's probably, if you get successful in it, folks, it like anything in life, hopefully you're getting considerable financial benefit, but fundamentally you're a glorified babysitter.
Yeah. Well, but the point of that story, Jonathan, is, nobody took the time to even give him a preamble of what it would look like to follow that pathway. Right. And so without that, he could have spent 4 years in school and went into debt to figure out he was training for a job he would hate. And I think sometimes our online communities make that same mistake. We make a lot of assumptions about the skill set or the knowledge that our users are coming to our sites with. And I think we need to get more basic. I think we need to, treat things from the start all the way up and make it simple. Stop trying to make ourselves look smart, by making them look stupid. Let's help them where they're at and get them to the next step.
I think another area, and this isn't original, I'm getting this from the startup community, folks. And the person that I heard it from first was a friend of the show, or Rob Rowling of the podcast Startups for the Rest of Us. And he said it a couple of times and I memorized it. And you really want to apply this to your, if you're trying to move some of your business from solely service to a service membership mixture. And it's what he says, a pain problem, or which is aspirin problem, or a vitamin problem, aspirational course. There are people that are successful where their focus is aspirational in their course. Join my course and I will show you how to get to A, B, C. You can end up like me, right?
Yeah.
I think you've got to have a certain amount of history, success, or I say that there's a few people that have no history of success in any shape or form, but they still manage it. But I think more if it's your first gig or your first entry into this space, folks, I think the aspirin, the pain, solving a pain or a need in your membership course is a more guarantee of success, because it's the same in the startup field. That's what Rob said a few times, and he's been on another podcast I do, which, like I said, Kirk is my regular co-host for that. Would you agree with what Rob outlined that? Because I'm not trying to claim it myself, because I made it quite clear that I got it from him.
I've actually been through a couple of Rob's books. I find him to be a pretty great communicator. That SaaS playbook that he recommended to us on that last show we did with him was a really good piece. And to your point, selling on the pain point always has a greater sense of urgency than aspiration. So a sense of urgency causes someone to buy now, and aspiration causes someone to think about it for the future. And so it depends on if you're playing the short game or the long game, right? But if you're in it to turn revenue quickly and to get started and get moving and get some paying clients, you want to be curing pain points.
And that's why because that's linked to what we've said earlier in this first half of the show, folks. That's why it's a good idea to do some one-to-one consultation online using Zoom or some other teleconference platform, and then doing small group consultation before you start building out a bigger course. Or you can just but even if you were building what I call a micro course, which then you can utilize as a lead magnet, it's one of the things I recommend. But it's finding out those pain points and then constructing, because I waffle on. Well, it's not exactly waffling, is it? It's a real peculiarity with me. We were doing an interview yesterday, actually, folks. This week has just gone, and I've got this terrible habit of putting 5 ideas in one question, and I'll get this very puzzled look from the interviewer, which it's totally, Kirk pointed out to me. And you were totally right, because I put this poor guest, I put about 5 questions in one piece, didn't I? And I consistently do that, don't I, Kurt?
And then you say, tell me what you think about what I've just said to you. It's okay.
No, but I don't know, but that's a peculiarity. But I'm that's one of the reasons on our other show, which is an interview-based show, folks, it's really quite good, even though I say it, is that I now write out the questions, and I just don't solely do that for the guests' benefit. I actually do it for my own, to try and because I was doing that much more regularly, Kurt, actually, and before I wrote out the key topics, because I just went on a bit of a journey, basically, right? I think we're going to go for our break now, folks. And when we come back, we're going to be discussing the Pacific journey that Kirk has gone, because he's from a service background and a managerial. He's got enormous experience in the motor industry, motorcycle, motorsport industry. And then he became a manager with a top multi-international company. And then he's gone freelance and he's built his own membership. And I think it's going to be fascinating to learn what technology decided upon and what he has learned from his own journey, building out his own membership business. I think you're going to get enormous benefit from that, listeners and viewers. So we're going to be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back, folks. We've had a good discussion. I think with Kirk's help, I've managed to keep on subject. Takes a lot. I rely on Kirk's honesty in trying to control my madness. Before we go into the second half of the show, I just want to point out, if you're looking to build your membership Buddy Boss community website on WordPress, and I think honestly that you should do, it gives you the degree of ownership and what I call digital sovereignty that you really need in 2023. Why don't you look at becoming a WP-Tonic, hosting your website on WP-Tonic and being part of our great family? I think we offer the best value for money for Pacific hosting designed for membership and community website. Plus, we've got a great support team. Plus, we offer a very long list of premier WordPress plugins and other features, which is too long to list in this segment of the show because I don't want to bore you to tears, listeners and viewers. But I think when Kirk started working with me, he just said, "I can't believe this, Jonathan. This is too much value at the price that you're asking." If that sounds interesting, why don't you go over to wp-tonic.com, see what we got to offer, and you can book a chat normally with me. The link to that's right in the top navigation on the website. We love, like I say, we love you to become part of the family. Right, Kurt. So what led to the decision? Let's start at the beginning. What I don't know how many courses you have built out for yourself, but I'm presuming that at some stage in the last couple of years, you decided to build out your own course. What was the main driver to doing that? And I would imagine you were looking at various solutions in your tech stack. Maybe you can give an outline about that journey or not. I'm just presuming what I've just asked.
Yeah, it's kind of a flashback to when I was a guest on your podcast. What was that, 3 years ago, I think?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I worked in the automotive industry as an employee at different dealerships to get my start. And so I worked as a service writer, service manager, service director. And through that experience and working at multiple brands, multiple dealerships, I gained a lot of experience in how those operations were run. And truth be known, Jonathan, I hated it. I hated what I did. And out of frustration, I wrote a book, published a book. And after I published that book, it was a mental exercise for me. I didn't think people were going to buy it. People did. And it changed the trajectory of my family. It took me from an employee at the dealership level to a recognized expert in the field, which I wasn't expecting when I did that. That was not the goal. I'm happy that's what happened, but that wasn't the intention. So,
you don't mind. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I've just interrupted, but can you give a brief outline, because it's a thing. How did you get the book? Was it self-published? And
self-published.
What was the? Can you give a quick outline of the process of the idea and actually doing it and getting it published? Or should we not go down there? Because we could probably fill a whole show with that journey, could we? I've interrupted, but if you don't want to go down that, I understand.
Well, without going into too much detail, there are a lot of options for self-publishing now. And when I did this in 2007, there were not. And so I basically wrote it in Word, saved it as a PDF, loaded it up to a print on demand service, and, put a price tag on it and put it on eBay. And, I was shocked. People started buying it, but it was in a very, automotive repair is a niche, right? It's a very niche down area. So people started to buy it. Well, one of the people that bought it was a trainer at Ducati, the motorcycle company. That company reached out to me and said, "Hey, will you write us a course?" I said, "Sure." I did. I had no idea how to do it at the time, but I wrote the course, and, I had worked for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation as an instructor. I had my own road racing school, so I understood how to teach, but I never really wrote a curriculum from scratch. But I wrote it for Ducati, and I said, "Okay, I don't know how this works. Do I sell it to you now or what? Because now it's done." And they were shocked, and they said, "Well, we don't have anyone to teach it. Would you be willing to teach it?" I said, "Okay." And then they said, "We don't have anyone to run the events. We want to teach all these events in Las Vegas. Would you be willing to host the events in Las Vegas?" So then I became an event coordinator. So I was an event coordinator, a trainer, a publisher. All of this stuff happened through this one experience with this one customer.
And by that, you were building your relationship with Ducati.
Exactly. And so I became a contracted trainer and content provider for that company for the next 4 or 5 years. And then finally a position opened up internally, and they hired me away from myself. So I was running Mañana No Mas back in 2008, but they hired me away from Mañana No Mas, and I worked directly for them for about the next 5 years. And then I went to Suzuki, which is a much bigger company, and I ran their training and publications department.
Well, it was, but am I not?
It's reduced quite a bit.
At the time that you were, because now Ducati is part of the Volkswagen Audi empire, isn't it?
Yeah, that's huge. It's still Volkswagen from a culture standpoint. They believe in a thing called brand sanctity. So they allow Ducati to still run as an independent, not really under the it's in the umbrella, but it runs as its own thing. Whereas when I went to Suzuki, it was huge in comparison, and I was in charge of automotive, marine, and motorcycle. Now, I'm giving you all this background to say that both companies, both Ducati and Suzuki, had e-learning examples for technicians to train technicians both virtually, and then they had a hybrid example where you would run workshops in person to basically validate that technicians knew what to do. And I was amazed at what those companies spent on training, Jonathan. Custom learning platforms and custom designs, and we refer to it as SCORM content and XAPI and GrassBlade in our circles, but in those circles it was just e-learning packages, and they would pay people tens of thousands of dollars to author a class, in that authoring tool. And so when I would look at the budgets, which I was privy to in those positions, I was kind of awestruck. I was like, there's a lot of money in this training. Like, there's a lot going on here. So I started focusing on, is there a way for me to do this more independently? Is there a way, because corporate was very difficult to steer the ship. Way too many decisions by committee. Things didn't get done quickly. Dealers weren't getting their needs met. At least I felt that dealers weren't getting their needs met quickly enough because they couldn't change direction quickly enough. And I thought, how could I run something more nimble, more affordable, and have more ownership of it, instead of having to rely on a vendor to make me a custom platform. And that's when I started looking at where I looked at a bunch. So I looked at Moodle. I think Kajabi was just coming out then. WordPress had a couple of examples out. Lifter LMS was one of them. And I sampled a bunch, and I ended up on Lifter LMS. And when I had a problem, the owner of Lifter LMS reached out directly via email to help me. That was Chris Badgett, mm-hmm. and I thought, how many companies are going to have the owner reach out to a client to help them?
Not many.
Yeah, and so they won my business. That was it. So I've been with Lifter LMS since, and my tech stack is very similar to what you discuss, with your other co-hosts on this show. I've got an LMS that's plugged into WordPress. I plug in a CRM so I can manage my contacts. I have a scheduling tool. And I do live hosted segments that I embed in my website. So that could be a Zoom embed, that could be a Whereby, that could be a Jitsi, some kind of tool that allows me to do that. And that's my tech stack, Jonathan. And I've been able to build.
Well, Jitsi, you were wondering, because I just throw this at Kirk. He deals with my badness. I'm quite creative in some ways, but it can
Oh,
be
he
a
is.
bit, it can be a bit bonkeritis, as I call it. That's a word. That's another habit, listeners and viewers. I create my own words when I want them. And yeah, and I just, Jitsi, and you say, what's this Jitsi thing? But it's not too bad, actually, is it? It's quite a good
No,
solution,
and
isn't it?
the picture quality is really good in Jitsi. That's what I really like. It doesn't get all pixelated and faded out, like some others do when you're
Because
streaming.
Zoom's fantastic as well, but it kind of linked into what I just said about digital ownership and digital sovereignty. Zoom's a great. Zoom's had some problems about its attitudes around security and privacy. And if somebody in the medical field or the counselling or in some very private consultation, I think there's some security concerns about utilising Zoom. The other thing is it's such an enormous company, folks, and that they can just decide to change direction, and it can be very inconvenient for a certain group of their users, because those that are embedding a Zoom conference on their web page is a small user base of the main product, and they've changed the way that you can actually utilize Zoom for that purpose, and they've made it a bit painful to get it all set up, especially if you're very technical. We can help you at WP-Tonic in that, but in general it's become a lot more painful about getting the initial setup done. After that, it's not too bad, but it's just the initial setup. And that's a very good example of is when you're on a SaaS-based platform and you rely on it totally, their business needs can very quickly change to what you really need. Sorry to interrupt there. Hopefully I didn't go off too long there. But so you decided on your stack and it was going to be Lifter LMS. So what's some of the key things that you learned on the journey of building out this course structure for yourself then?
I learned a couple of really key things, Jonathan, and that is, if someone had the patience to listen to the last 15 minutes, they heard that, I worked with technicians directly. I managed technicians, and then I went to the corporate level that managed all the dealerships. I managed all of those companies, all of their publications and training materials, and then I went independent. So part of my problem was that War and Peace thing that you talked about. I started amassing this content that I was going to release, on my own and be this wonder thing, in the industry. And I also made some pretty bad assumptions. I thought that because of my previous roles in power sports and at the OEM level, knowing most of the people in the game, at least that would be my customers, I thought, well, I'll have to beat them off with a stick. I mean, as soon as they hear that I've got a product available, they're going to jump all over it. And so I wasn't too concerned about SEO or marketing or even the quality of my copy. I mean, I knew I was putting out great content in the learning areas, but I wasn't overly concerned about headlines and landing pages and forms because I made an assumption that I would have an audience quickly. And these are all very, very big mistakes. Very big mistakes. So my advice.
Well, I wouldn't beat yourself because based on my experience, it's a story that I've heard very regularly, Kurt.
Yeah. Yeah. You still have to demonstrate, like you just talked about with Rob Walling's quote, are you the aspirin or are you the vitamin? And who is your target audience? I realized a year into my project that I wasn't even targeting the right people. I was targeting the people that I would train, but those people weren't going to pay me. It's their bosses that would have to hire me to train them. So I was making all this content, talking to service writers and service managers in the field, but it didn't matter because they weren't making the buying decision. So there was a lot to learn. And now that I work directly in an area where I teach other people how to find success in these platforms, I'm very direct with what's your minimal viable product? What can we do to get you going quickly and then get you, 10 to 25 paying customers so that you can develop a product around a community. So that's one. The other thing is, we have to do the basics in SEO and copy optimization. You can't make assumptions that you're just going to have an audience, because you can't assume. Yeah, you have to treat the whole project like you are trying to attract new, fresh eyes.
Well, I don't know, looking at back yourself, do you think you built a big enough community on the social network communities? Did you spend enough time building a network there, really? Because you can build, I've seen, I have not done it. I've got a reasonably focused newsletter list of about 1,000 people.
Yeah.
But I've noticed some really sweet people doing things really quite well with the LinkedIn newsletter functionality.
Yep.
Do you think you did enough on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on those, to build up a community before you launched your course? Because I think a lot of people don't, which fascinates me, really.
What I have learned, Jonathan, and maybe you've experienced this too, you and I never really had this conversation, but my podcast, for example, the Mañana No Mas podcast, I almost just stopped doing it. I've been doing it for 5 years and I almost just stopped. But then I got a notice from Spotify that said, your listenership's gone up 33% this year and you're in the top 15% for your category. And I was like, well, I'm doing something right. I guess I got to get back behind the microphone.
Oh, I've got a fact here that might enlighten you a bit. I've interrupted. I'd keep doing this, don't I? But you do. You're such a gracious individual. You don't get totally peeved off. Do you know the average podcast gets only 30 downloads a month?
I didn't know that was average. No.
Yeah.
What I found remarkable, and the first time that it's happened more than once now, but the first time it happened, it blew me away. I went to a dealership. I was trying to sell the general manager on our training services, and the owner called. And so the general manager put him on speakerphone, and the guy goes, the owner says, oh, is that guy here, to talk about training? And the general manager goes, yeah, Kurt's here. And he goes, Kurt, what's his last name? And this is on speakerphone. I don't see the guy. And he goes, well, it's Kurt Von Onen. And he goes, you mean Mañana No Mas, Kurt? Well, I had never heard that before in my life. So I was like, what's going on here? And then he goes, whatever he says to do, just tell him yes, and we'll write the check. I've been listening to that guy for 3 years. He really knows his SHIT. And I was a little embarrassed, a little flabbergasted, a little overwhelmed, but super thankful in the moment that I did the work. I laid the groundwork and it paid off. But you never know when that's going to happen.
No, I've had exactly the same when I've gone to WordCamps, or I've gone to like WordCamp Europe or WordCamp USA. Obviously, I'm English and I've got a London East End Essex boy accent. As soon as people say, "Oh, is that Jonathan?" You WP-Tonic. I have people all the time come up to me and say, "Are you WP-Tonic?" And one of the problems with podcasting is you don't get a lot of feedback. Other people seem to be getting much more. And like I say, folks, if you've got any questions, we do this normally around 8:30 on Fridays at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're doing this a bit later because Kirk, my normal host, has unfortunately, for understandable reason, had to resign. She will be sorely missed. But there's no bad feeling between me and her. So I'll be looking for a new co-host. So Kurt's going to help me out maybe for a couple of weeks, but maybe we'll have a new host next week. But is getting engagement. So if you're around 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, subscribe to the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. And I know it's a little bit confusing, but it's the Membership Machine shows part of the bigger family of WP-Tonic podcasts. and go to the WP-Tonic YouTube channel and subscribe there. And the benefit you get is if you join us live, you can ask us any questions about your membership site and we'll answer them during the show. So please join us live. So get back to it. What do you think? Do you think you could have built up more of a community and more of an audience before you built the course, really?
I'm not certain where the gaps were. And I know that there's people that we've interviewed recently, Jonathan, that would be much more analytical at this than I am. But, you know, is there plenty of content on YouTube? Yes. But is there the viewership there? No. So was that an SEO issue? Was that an advertising issue? I ran a couple of ads on Facebook. I didn't see much play there. So then I went back to doing like lives on LinkedIn. And I'll tell you, this LinkedIn thing to me, it seems to be like, you know, like yesterday's Facebook, yesterday's Instagram. There seems to be pretty good mojo on LinkedIn. And I got the permission to go LinkedIn live last year and started really leveraging that space. And I seem to be getting some more momentum there. But as far as mail lists go, I mean, I'm at like 9,000 people on LinkedIn. I've got 6,000 people on another mail list that's curated for my business practices. And, you know, you would think that would be enough to really grow, but, you know, you always want more.
So based on what we discussed in the first half and discussed during this second half, what if you had known what we had discussed in this episode at the start of building out your own course, what would be the major differences? What would be major things you would apply to your own course based on what we've discussed during this episode?
Well, for people listening to this and wondering, how do I get out of the grind and do what these guys are doing, right? Because sometimes we talk and it just sounds like, yeah, that'd be nice if, right? But it's very, very actionable. You know, get yourself something that you can organize in. I use a Remarkable 2 tablet, so everything's organized, but get your ideas on paper or in a tablet that you can organize and start putting together, to Jonathan's point, you know, answering those questions of what are the pain points that a potential audience or community would want feedback on, and then really identify where your strength is as a subject matter expert. And it could be a job, a hobby, like we said earlier in the podcast, but you want to start kind of figuring out what are your strengths, how do those answer people's pain points, and then how would you build content around those subjects, and then simplify it as much as possible for a minimal viable product and get started. If you keep talking about it and keep dreaming about it and keep talking about that book you're going to write someday, you're never going to write that book. You're never going to have that course. You're never going to have that site. You got to get started. And for a lot of people, having the LMS, you know, whether it's LearnDash or Lifter LMS or whatever tool, having it and being able to put the syllabus in online and see it start to fill out the spaces, sometimes that's enough inspiration for a course creator to finish the product.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I've even noticed, because Lifter LMS and Kirk is one of the leading facilitators, is one of the great things of the what LearnDash offers at if you buy into some of their premier products, is they offer fabulous regular weekly round table community sessions where you can bring up technical, and basically they just don't support just the emphasis obviously is on Lifter LMS, but they answer literally any kind of question, to the best of their ability, taking in the demands that everybody's questions have to be answered during the session. But it's amazing the amount of people that turn up to those sessions that bought Lifter and they've just sat on it for months and months and months, and it's just they just need that prod that to do those first steps to actually get on with it, don't they?
Yeah, it's just like anything else in life, Jonathan. If you're new to it, there's a learning curve. And when we do this for any length of time, we start to take it for granted. We forget where people were at when they got started. It's like being obese and then thinking, well, I'm going to be 190 pounds. And you can't go from obesity to 190 pounds.
Well, you
right?
say that, you know, that 2 years ago I was at 320 pounds,
Yeah.
but now
Yeah.
I'm 200 pounds.
But it wasn't an overnight process. And if you thought about it, if you go back to your 300-pound Jonathan, it was overwhelming to think of what life would be like at 200 pounds, right? Like in that moment, so you had to just one day at a time.
Well, actually,
yeah,
you are right. But what actually spurred me is I had to go and see that I wasn't actually feeling that bad. But I went to the doctor about something else, and the doctor was our oldish guy, and he was very, I won't say rude, but he was no nonsense. And he said, if you keep like this, you'll be dead in less than 6 years.
Wow.
And I said, what do you mean? How do you know? He said, oh, we've measured your throat, and that, your body mass, you're getting close to being morbid obese. You're not going to live. Somebody your age, you're either going to have a stroke or a heart attack, or or you're going to get diabetes too really bad, and the outcomes aren't going to be very good, Mr. Denwood.
He took your vitamin talk and turned it into a pain point talk.
And I thought to myself, we're all in God's hands. We like the delusion that we can control everything, and the reality is that we control very little, apart from our attitudes. I thought to myself, do I just want to die of a heart attack, or get a stroke and be paralyzed, or get diabetes too? I'm not really. I need to change this. So,
yep.
So whatever outcome I achieved, I was up for it. So, and I only eat once a day, folks. I got into what is called intermediate fasting, and I only have one meal a day, and I walk 5 miles a day now, folks, which really helps with running your own business is extremely challenging mentally, because it's a total roller coaster. You can have ups and downs in just one day. You think you made really great progress in 1 week, and then on the Monday you're back to square one again. Yeah, it's all over. It is extremely mentally challenging.
Yeah, you mentioned a really good point right there, and more advice I would give to people transferring from a service to a membership lifestyle is to journal it, document it, and basically record those snapshots and milestones along the way. Because those weeks that happen where you make no progress and you feel like a loser and you want to give up, you can go back and look in your journal and go, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I was this low when I started. Now I'm up here. I have made headway. And you know that you'll continue to go forward if you just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and just to finish off, folks, when you start building, when you start building your first membership website, is that the progress will be much slower than you think. You're gonna say to me, but when does progress? When is you should give up? Well, the fact is most people give up too early because their assumptions. Obviously, one of the beauties of what we talk about in this podcast, folks, is that you can still be in full-time work and have the ability to build this up as a second source of income, or as a journey to give up your main job, right? And it's totally plausible for you to do this. It's going to be a hard work, but it's totally doable. But the thing I would say I would guide you on, even though as long as there is progress, it's probably going to be a lot slower than you think until you get to a certain point, and then it will accelerate. But as long as you're making progress and you've got the financial means and commitment means to allow you to keep working, and as long as you're making steady progress, don't give up. It's when you're not making any progress for a substantial period of time and you've got no plan of action to change the model or to pivot, that term comes from startup culture again, then I think you've got a problem, because then you're probably flogging, as we would say in English or London, you're flogging a dead horse, basically. What was your, to end the show, what's your own views with what I've just said, Kurt?
On the money, 100%. For me, constant moving forward is important, and it doesn't matter how fast or how slow. I just need to know that there's progress. As long as I can demonstrate or log or journal down some progress, I know I'm going in the right direction. And you got to be patient. You got to sow enough seed that the harvest is big enough. You can't expect it overnight.
Well, I think it's been an excellent show, Kurt. I've really enjoyed this discussion. What's the best way for people to learn more about you, your and the experience you could offer them? If you're looking to get one-to-one consultation about building a membership site, I think a great resource would be to spend a little bit of money with Kurt. So what's the best way to go over and find out more about you?
Mañana no más is the website and the podcast. So Mañana no más, tomorrow no more. And then LinkedIn, as we mentioned earlier in the show, is my jam. I'm the only Kurt Von Onen on LinkedIn. So when you find me, you got the right guy. Just hit the connection link and we'll get connected and we'll see how we can help each other.
That's fantastic. And like what I said, folks, go to YouTube and find the WP-Tonic YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, and then you'll be updated automatically when the next Membership Machine show comes up. You can join us live then, and you've got any membership questions, you can ask them live. Plus, we've got a great Facebook community. It's the WP-Tonic Membership Machine Show channel. You can join us there. Kirk's on there. I'm on there. You've got any questions? We've got a great mixture of WordPress professionals and people building membership websites on there. So it's a great community. Go and join us there. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.